My name is David.
Oh, I'm Zach.
And this is the podcast where Zach and I, David, trek through the Star Trek universe, episode by episode.
A single star date at a time.
That's right. And we are your companions on this voyage. You are aboard the USS Star Companion. If you look to the left, there's CD Alpha 5. If you look to the right,
CD Alpha 5!
CD Alpha 5! Anyways, today we are reviewing Season 1, Episode 3 of Enterprise. This episode is called Strange New World. Do you have a star date there for us, Captain?
There's actually no star date. They don't record a date, but it is 2151.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So today, in this episode, we find ourselves again on board the Starship Enterprise, and the crew of the Enterprise, they're jonesing, man. They're ready. They're ready to find some new planets, some new civilizations. They're ready to seek out some shit. And it just so happens that they stumble upon an unknown Minshara class planet, and it's completely devoid of humanoid life, but it's got trees, it's got rivers, it's got babbling brooks.
It looks like fucking Northern California.
It really does.
That's exactly what that looks like. They went to Rock Creek Lake over the Eastern Sierras, let me tell you.
So you know what, Jonathan Archer, he needs his crew to get down there and enjoy some time, and despite T'Pol's request to survey the planet for an extended period from the Enterprise, Archer instead plays his trump card and asks her to prep a survey team and descend to the surface immediately.
Smart.
Yeah, classic Archer. You know, just throwing caution to the wind and saying, you know what, our people have been on the ship for days at this point. We need a break.
We need some shore leave, T'Pol.
That's right.
You fucking emotionless monster.
Well, yeah, you don't get it, T'Pol.
Okay.
My people need to feel the wind on their face. They need to feel the sun in their hair.
Before you get too deep into this
go
synopsis, I just want to say, if that was my fucking dog, I would not have just let it run off a fucking ship onto an uncharted, unknown planet. Okay?
Yeah.
Not cool.
You know, again, this is Northern California, and these are the voyages of the Starship, the original voyages of the Starship Enterprise. And I think we're finding kind of a theme here in the first 3 episodes, which is, you know, the crew, they're making mistakes. They're out there, they're voyaging, they're making mistakes. Voyages. And I think we find out pretty quickly that mistakes have been made on this planet.
You know, continue.
So T'Pol assembles her crack survey team of herself, Commander Tucker, Ensign Mayweather, and a couple crewmen. I believe their names are Cutler and either Novakovich, yeah. And so they happen to spend the night there, and lo and behold, a strong storm moves in, and T'Pol orders her crew to take refuge in a nearby cave. And go ahead.
Before they go into the cave and before the storm happens, Archer and is it Reed? I think Reed. Archer and Mayweather go back up to the ship, and they're like, "Let's just camp, motherfucker."
It is Reed.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Let's just take a camp.
Yeah. And it's at the 8-minute and 14-second mark in this episode that Archer orders Commander Tucker to pitch his tent. Which I found thoroughly amusing.
Oh, god damn it. And then they go into the cave.
And that's when things begin to get weird. The Paul and the other crew members, they start seeing things, they start hallucinating, and they start imagining that they're humanoids. Yeah. They imagine that they're seeing humanoids in and outside of the cave. And Ensign Novakovich runs out of the cave after one. Everybody tries to go and save him, but they can't find him in the storm, so they all say fuck it and run back over to the cave and take refuge. And Lieutenant Reed and Archer are able to find Novakovich, and they beam him on board, and he's got all these growths all over him, and he's like hallucinating. He's tripping balls.
He's tripping nuts.
He's tripping nuts.
He's got pieces of the storm, the foliage that are...
Oh, is that what that is?
Scattered around, yeah.
Oh,
because they're using the transporter, and so, the way the transporter works is they take your atoms, they break them apart, and put them back together, and since they have never really used that shit, the atoms are mixed in the little area with the storm blowing the foliage and rocks around.
Got it. Okay. See, I thought that was the effect of the psychotropic pollen that was going around. But he apparently got synthesized with leaves and rocks and things.
They synthesized him.
Synthesized. So the main conflict in this episode is that they can't beam them back because the storm is really bad, but they're also tripping balls down in this cave. And as the episode progresses, Tucker Trip gets more and more violent, and he gets more and more violent against T'Pol. And you wanna jump in here? You got any?
Yeah. So then he starts to attack T'Pol because they think T'Pol is speaking clandestine, secrets to some unknown beings deep into the cave, and it's one big it's a witch hunt, if you will, where they think she's creating some sort of subterfuge with other Vulcans to prove that they can't cut the mustard out in space. It definitely pisses Trip off, and because he's tripping nuts, the people that they see her talking to aren't real. It's a hallucinogenic effect.
That's right.
And when they have Novakovich up, Phlox figures out that he's been affected. Forgive me for not remembering exactly what it was, but he's been affected with the psychotropic drug, but it's gonna kill him. That's when, in a standoff sort of scenario, when Tucker takes the it's okay, it's not loaded. When Tucker takes the phaser from T'Pol, and Archer tries to contacts them and tries to tell them what's going on, and Trip denies it, and he goes, "It's fucking bullshit. She's a dirty fucking Vulcan. She's trying to double cross us." And T'Pol's so fucked up, she's speaking Vulcan instead, she ends up. T'Pol relays a message to Hoshi, who knows Vulcan, that she's speaking. She's saying that she's in danger. Trip's got a gun on her, and we need to figure something out. They devise a plan where they play act. I think. Let's see if I have the line. I don't think I do, but more or less, T'Pol says, theater arts isn't a tradition on Vulcan, but she'll do her best.
Yes, that's true.
And then they act their goddamn way out of it, and T'Pol proceeds to stun Trip and knock him out, and then at which point they transport down the vaccine, the anti-psychotropic effects. T'Pol shoots everyone up with it, and there's a very heartwarming scene where they say, "Oh, well, I didn't really mean everything I said last night," which I'm sure happens to you all the time. And and myself being just a couple of dudes who spend their free time talking about Star Trek. Happens all the time.
I definitely wake up a lot of mornings and say, "Whoa, what the fuck happened?"
Yeah, that's what my dog tells me. You were crazy last night. It allegedly, according to early iteration of the story, Novakovich was supposed to die.
Interesting.
But Brannon and Braga didn't want to have any people die this early on, and that sort of storytelling really affected some of the actors in it, specifically Killingsley Phlox. Said, there's no danger here, despite being in danger. If no one's gonna fucking die, what's the consequence of these rash decisions that they're making?
Yeah, and it is a classic Star Trek trope where, you go down to the surface with some nameless ensign,
He's gonna die.
The captain's coming back, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I definitely would have liked to seen some death in this one, but I guess it kind of does play into the whole Jonathan Archer heartwarming first voyages. We're making mistakes. We're infants in space. Type spiel or type energy of the show thus far.
I think my biggest gripe is T'Pol being a Vulcan and someone who's had this warp speed technology, traveled the world, galaxy rather. The Vulcans have transporter technology, right? Why isn't she like, yo, it's fine, let's just transport off this bitch? You know?
Seriously.
Exactly. That shit really got me thinking, what the fuck's going on here? Why are we still taking shuttles? And it just, but like you were saying, the complete disregard for protocols. Archer's like, fuck it,
Nah.
let's just go down. We gotta fucking take a camp. And so there's a blatant disregard for disrupting an ecosystem with their human brazenness.
Yeah, exactly. And it brings up again, I know you mentioned in the first episode, the whole xenophobia type thing. When Trip starts tripping, he gets xenophobic against T'Pol, and it just shows that those sentiments aren't gone. And that's, again, they've nailed the continuity, because in the first episode they set up that, like, the Vulcans, especially Archer, didn't like him growing up, and I imagine a lot of the crew are the same, where they don't like how the Vulcans have kept them back and not given them the technology. So it's interesting that Trip when he hallucinates, he immediately gets
Racist.
Yeah, racist towards T'Pol.
Where do you think Trip is from? Have you gotten to that point yet?
I think he's
in your first watch through a little bit.
Maybe Montana or something like that.
So no, he's actually from Florida.
Really?
Yeah.
Which I do hear some Creole in there, a little bit.
Yeah, he's definitely got that southern accent, but he's not even from Panhandle, Florida. He's from, like, middle of the little dick that hangs off. Not sure what they actually call that.
The Keys?
No, not the Keys, not at the bottom, but, this is Florida. He's, like, right here.
Okay.
It becomes important later on.
Okay.
Yeah, but let's go to another gripe.
Yeah, let's go.
It's the future, right? How come the camping gear is like early 2000s Patagonia? Like, I got this at REI.
Yeah.
There's no future camp.
Yeah, you would expect something of the future. Hopefully, be made out of chrome.
Chrome.
All of the shotgun from the first episode, that was made out of chrome. Expanding off of that tent, I thought it was a fine piece of acting that Ensign Mayweather and Trip did when they were in the tent together, and that scorpion sneaks in, and they're obviously, like, shaking the tent, like, with their backs. I thought that was a fine bit of acting.
Yeah. They do a really good job of actually creating drama and building tension with limited effects.
Yes, definitely.
And I think that's a real cause for storytelling, despite everyone really hating on this this iteration of Star Trek, and that's why they're wrong.
But again, that's why I feel like this series you can justify it being part of the canon, because that's a trope of Star Trek, which is the story. It's more about the story and less about the special effects.
Exactly.
I mean, granted, this series does seem to have a bit more special effects than the other series, but I mean that's
a product of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I particularly like that. It's just cute how in awe they are over the new planet. Mm-hmm. They couldn't love it anymore, and I just love how it's early on in this series, because Archer or Bakula is just overacting his fucking ass off.
He really is,
and I like how ensemble these are. They really kind of hold true to that early Next Generation TOS sort of vibe.
Yeah, and Archer again shows that he's just a wholesome, warm-hearted son of a bitch. When they're out doing the original survey, and T'Pol calls him on the tricorder, or calls him on the communicator, and says, "Captain, where are you? We were supposed to rendezvous 10 minutes ago." And he says, "We took a stroll, T'Pol." It's like Dad always has some wholesome reason as to why things aren't going exactly as the Vulcans would have liked to be planned.
Yeah, a real lack of order. And furthermore, Archer continues down. During the middle of the storm, he tries to fly down with Mayweather. And you just gotta love that. He's trying to cowboy his way in to save the day. He's real take on Kirk.
Yeah. I just had a thought right now. Since we've been calling Scott Bakula Dad, do you think that it would be a valid maybe observation that maybe Archer could be considered kind of the father figure, and T'Pol maybe more of the mother character, the mother figure?
Oh yeah, definitely, with their little crew of kids.
Yeah, I mean, because Archer is kind of the he plays fast and loose, kind of gives people tough love, is stern but always gives them a smile and a pat on the back later, whereas T'Pol is kind of more the maybe the stereotypical mother, where she sees her kids having fun and she'd rather them be off doing their homework and working on themselves. But
Disneyland Dad over here.
That's right. And I'm not saying that's an accurate depiction of how families interact, but I mean, we've seen that kind of maybe enacted over the years and over the decades in film and in cinema, just that classic dichotomy of strict, overbearing mother and whimsical, fun dad.
Yeah. If Cisco and DS9 didn't love baseball, I would be damned to think that Archer would be the one that loved baseball. Instead, it's water polo. I really liked how when Trip and T'Pol are having the standoff, she just walks over and gives him like the world's quickest sleeper hold. Like, bang. You're done. Thanks. Yeah. On a second viewing here, it really was obvious the glowing bugs, the pollen that was out. I didn't even notice that the first time, and then this time it's like, oh, dude! Right as they show up, there's a little fucking pollen out. Right as it gets nighttime.
Dark time. What's interesting is they land on this planet. There's a ton of foliage. There's trees. There's water. There's every sign of life, but you don't ever see a single animal. Like, if there weren't humanoids around, there would at least be space cougars, space jaguars.
Yeah, space lobster.
Space lobster. Some sort of mammalian some sort of mammalian space lobster, some sort of mammalian iteration of life form. But you don't see that here, and I find that interesting. But maybe again, that's kind of going back to, limited budget, focusing more on the story and focusing more on how the crew interacts with each other.
Yeah. It's yeah, actually, that's pretty salient, I think. They don't really need to focus on the extracurriculars. I feel like if Enterprise was made now, there would be, there would be one shot of like a space iguana,
Yes.
showing its colors and like a bird hopping around. Yeah. By the way, this is, you don't, years of training, to become these sort of animals. The title of this episode is Strange New World, as we referenced before, and that itself references both a narration spoken by William Shatner in the opening credits of TOS, as well as a book by Brave New World by Aldous Huxley.
Interesting.
In which the inhabitants of an entire civilization are drugged. So that's kind of the allegories that are going on here.
Wow. I love how deep they get with this, and how subtle it is, and how not overstated it is.
That's the beauty of Star Trek, I think, and I think that's why we're doing sort of philosophical, allegorical stories, different takes on episodes through all of Star Trek in the Patreon. Because this is just an overview of the shows by Stardate. Not to pitch the Patreon real quick, but in the Patreon we're doing extra little episodes, so check us out on there.
That's right. Yeah.
But back to it, the writers on this episode said they wrote this one while they were still casting. So they were like, I wonder what Enterprise looks like. They had just gotten used to writing Voyager and its characters, and now they have brand new characters who were from 200 years earlier, and they had to learn everything that they had learned writing Voyager. So they tried to take on the characters that were relatable from the present, but not, there was a sense of they didn't know who they were. They wanted to make them relatable, and yet not so relatable that they were different enough.
Right.
So it's just interesting that they wrote this one, which, it kind of comes across as it's just kind of a typical A-B sort of story tension. So they didn't need to know what they look like. But just a pretty interesting little tidbit there.
Yeah.
The writing staff states that they were deliberately setting out to concentrate more on character-centered stories than on high-concept science fiction yarns.
They did, even though that was their intention, the whole psychotropic, hallucinogenic pollen thing, like it's interesting, it's, this is going to sound really obvious, but you go to other planets, like you can't expect it to be just like Earth.
Exactly.
There's going to be stuff there that, there's going to be pollen there that could, and they got lucky that it was only hallucinogen. Well, it could have killed them if Phlox didn't develop
exactly
that antigen to it. But it is kind of like a tale of caution for Enterprise and her crew. It's like, yeah, you guys are itching to get out there and explore, but again, you're new to this, and maybe it's good that they're making these little baby mistakes, because it's instructive for later about how cautious they should be.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that is one of the saving graces of Enterprise, in this, that they're learning the process of what's going on. This episode, by the way, the planet that they visit, in a much later episode, in A Mirror Darkly Part 2, the bio screen of Archer reveals that this episode's planet is the first M-class planet visited by a human, and it was later named Archer 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a planet originally mentioned as the site of battle between the Klingons and the Enterprise D in TNG's Yesterday's Enterprise. which is kind of fun. And then Archer also mentions the planet to Captain Hernandez in the fourth season in the episode Home.
This is CT Archer 4.
Yeah, CT Alpha. What? Archer 4. And then there's another reference to this planet. Archer apparently really loves talking about this planet because in later in this season, in the episode Oasis, while strolling with Mayweather, Archer asks if their visit to the ship in that episode is turning into one of his famous ghost stories, as the one he tells in this episod. It's like...
That's right, yeah.
You weren't even there for the ghost story, my guy.
Yeah.
So you're telling a story of a story, to the guy who told the stories. It just seems like, this is something Dad totally would do.
Yeah.
It's also
Dad would tell a story like he was there. That is something Dad would do.
Okay, hold on. That's my bacula.
It's like halfway between a smirk and a grin.
Yep. But also a little, questioning.
Yeah, a little bit. Inquisitive. It's an inquisitive half smirk grin.
This is the first time in any Star Trek that they revealed that the Vulcan planetary classification of Minshara class. It's always just been Class M.
Right.
Which is kind of cool. And then, so, fun fact, these rock creatures, that they hallucinated, they were actually an abandoned concept for Star Trek V's The Final Frontier.
The movie.
Yeah, the movie.
Okay.
Star Trek V.
You mean the people that kind of, what's the word? Like evaporate out of the wall, kind of, a little bit?
Yeah, the ones that the crew is hallucinating that T'Pol's talking to. Mm-hmm. That was supposed to be like the main villain in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, but they scrapped it due to budgetary constraints.
So they went with the Klingons again.
I mean, let's just paint them, a little darker. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fucking Star Trek. But did you have anything else you wanted to hit here?
No, not really. I mean, this was kind of just in comparison. I mean, it's a good episode. It's still Star Trek, but like you were gesturing there, it's a real cut and dry episode.
Yeah. I think we should we're going to do this on the fly. Mm-hmm. Discuss, we need to come up with some sort of ranking system.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Maybe that'll come up in one of these few episodes, but for now, I'm going to give it a 3.
Okay. Out of 5?
Out of 5.
Okay. Yeah, just a good middle of the road episode.
Yeah. Monster of the week sort of thing.
I'm with you there.
Deal. Well, this has been... the Star Companion podcast. I'm Zach.
Right. And I'm David.
And
you can find us on any major podcasting platform, including iTunes and what was the other one?
Google Play, Spotify, YouTube. Mm-hmm. The videos on YouTube. Just search the Star Companion. You'll find us.
We also have an Instagram, so you can follow us there. We post fun little memes and fun little tidbits. And again, if you'd like to follow us along the timeline, we have it posted on our website, and you can find most of the episodes on Netflix, and anything else you can just steal.